Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here in London. I'm responsible for our embedded business around the world, and it's actually quite nice to be in my home city. I guess the thing that I want to talk about today is really about platforms. Platforms for a totally connected world, a world which is actually changing very, very rapidly. Now, I guess at this particular event, I don't need to go through machine-to-machine definitions. I'm sort of guessing that most people here have a pretty good idea. However, the key point that I would make is it is about capturing events and turning them into meaningful information. It's clearly not enough just to capture data and events and then do nothing with them. You've got to do something with them. You've got to turn it into meaningful information. And I want to talk a little bit about that as we go through this. Now, when we're talking to people, quite clearly, one of the things that is coming out is that the world is changing very quickly. There's a huge number of different things going on. Lots more devices, lots more sensors, issues around security, regulation is changing, connectivity is changing, the whole way that people think about their business is changing, as we've heard from the previous two speakers. So that complexity is something which has the danger of driving up cost. What we need to think about is how do we simplify? How do we get to an environment where we can genuinely start doing things quicker, we can genuinely start doing things more efficiently, but most importantly, that the end user customers, whether they be consumers or whether they be businesses, see genuine, absolute benefit from what we're doing. Now, we all know this. Huge numbers of internet users. This is by definition out of date. There's going to be many more internet users. We know that there's going to be a massive growth of 3G and now 4G subscribers. Connectivity is becoming ubiquitous around the world. And Ericsson is saying there's going to be 50 billion devices connected to the internet in some form over the next 2 to 3 years. What does that mean? Well, actually it means that we have to think totally differently. When you've got a relatively small number of devices, most of which have got a screen on them connected to the internet, that's one thing. When you move to 50 billion devices, and most of those do not have screens, they're delivering a certain amount of data, sometimes large amounts, sometimes small amounts, we have to think differently. We have to work differently. We have to architect differently to be able to look at these things and do something with it. So we actually asked Beecham Research to do some research for us about what's happening in the M2M marketplace. Talking to the people who are involved in the business about what sort of things are they implementing, what are the primary drivers. And it was sort of interesting what came out. The number one now is all about enabling new services and revenue streams. Interestingly, 2 years ago, it was all about efficiency and effectivity. Now, actually, efficiency and effectivity still have a role to play in this marketplace. GE recently released a report talking about the 1% effect. If you could, by using machine-to-machine technology, improve aviation efficiency by 1%, it saves that world $30 billion. If you could increase the efficiency in the health service market across the world by 1%, that's a saving of $63 billion. These are enormous numbers. That's the prize of this business. But the other prize is being able to do things with the information and the data, delivering new services to consumers and businesses in a way which has never been delivered before. And 75% of the people who Beecham talked to now see that as being a really major business opportunity. But of course there are a number of challenges when you're putting these projects together. There's lots of different people in the ecosystem. People have to think about regulation, security, this whole thing about real-time data and analysis. There's a whole stack of different things that when you're doing genuine end-to-end M2M projects that you have to think differently about. And what Beecham found out, which was sort of fairly interesting, was what were the the top 3 priorities in delivering M2M projects. And the one which stood out is obviously end-to-end security. If you're going to have a truly integrated M2M environment, security has got to be everything from the device all the way through to the back end, to the data center. If you can break into that environment in any shape or form, you get into those systems. And of course, if you're talking about something like healthcare, and you're talking about in the Western world, there are serious regulations about being able to protect that data. So understanding end-to-end security is fundamentally important. And of course, machine-to-machine is not just about machine-to-machine. It's about integrating with the whole IT infrastructure to get that benefit. And that can be an expensive game. So how do they do that? And the value chains are changing. Every project, you may have different partners. You may have different people you have to work with to be able to deliver that value. So integrating and coordinating across the partners in the value chain is absolutely important. And of course, nobody has got any more money. So the reality is that you have to be able to see those efficiencies, you have to build that benefit in a way which will actually generate benefit and be self-funding. What's sort of interesting is that Beecham also found out that of the people that they were talking to, that 75% have already recognised that they have to integrate it into the back-end systems, whether they be CRM-type systems or whether they be ERP-type systems. And this is increasing all the time. And we're seeing this more and more in large organisations where they're starting to think of not M2M being something on the side. M2M's been around for, what, 10, 12 years. It's actually now becoming core to the way people look at their businesses. But then they have a set of concerns. And one of the major concerns that they have is, it's sort of a bit of a problem. If you've got to start writing something for each individual device in like native code, and you're doing something else totally differently when you're moving to the data center, that's a real problem. Having the same language, having the same environment to be able to do everything from all the way from the smallest card all the way through to the back end actually increases agility, increases efficiency. And of course, if devices and sensors are fundamental in the value chain, actually you can no longer allow them to go down. You've got to have a robust system, a system that's got disaster recovery, a system that's got automatic failover, that allows you to deliver real-time information. And of course, we're talking about massive growth of data. Data's going to double every year, at least. People have to plan for that. When I talk to large organisations and I talk to the CIOs, most of them have got a pretty good IT strategy. Have they really thought about having a data management strategy when they're talking about an M2M world where data is going to grow exponentially? It's something that people have to think about. And of course, it's not just taking huge volumes of data. It's about taking those data and making it into actionable insights, things that you can do something about, ideally without human interaction. In an M2M world, it should be about a value chain where humans are not necessarily involved at all, that actions are firing in different ways. So it's not just about big data, it's about fast data. But I'll come back to fast data. When we talk about the big data lifecycle, the critical part of this is making sure that you actually do think about how you're going to acquire, how you're going to get that information. It sounds like a simple thing to do, but when you're talking about getting information from 50 billion devices, when you're talking about getting about a petabyte of data a day from a fleet of cars like BMW are talking about, or whether you're talking about getting 30 gigabytes from each car every month, as was discussed yesterday, the reality is these are big volumes. These are volumes where people have to use new and different tools to be able to acquire and organise that environment, whether it be through big data type of appliance environments or whether it be through other techniques. You've got to integrate that environment so you can do something with it. And being able to use high-powered equipment to get the analytics, to be able to make those decisions, making those decisions then back to creating, taking action and moving on. But of course, it is about speed. The problem that you've got is that when you think about the business value of the information that you're getting, the value declines dramatically if it takes too long to take action. Let me give you an example. I talked a little bit about healthcare, about the benefits that GE see. The primary driver in healthcare is how do you move patients out of hospitals? How can you monitor them at home to make sure that they don't have to take up bed space? Huge benefit from a cost perspective, huge benefit for the individual in lifestyle. However, you have to be able to monitor that and take action automatically to get an ambulance to them if something goes wrong. Actually, that action time is critical in that environment. You've got to have an integrated system which allows people to get to the security system in their house so you can get in if there's something wrong. You have to make sure it's integrated in the hospital to have the right specialist there when they arrive. You have to make sure they can get to the right ward. It's not a question of, oh, well, we can do it tomorrow. This is real-time stuff which has got to do it. The value of the data is in the speed that you can take action. It's not good enough to just think about getting some information and doing something with it in a day or two. And this is increasingly going to be a demand in this business. It is about fast data, not just about big data. It's about taking all that structured and unstructured environment and doing something with it that you can predict, that can drive that environment. And of course, getting this intelligence is about now taking lots of different sensors, lots of different devices, taking all of that information and then doing something with it in a way which allows you to do it efficiently as well. We're seeing an increasing interest in complex event processing. Why? Because complex event processing allows you to take all this disparate information, being able to do something with it, do it very efficiently, being able to drive that into the edge devices. What we've now looked at is how can we do that and do that really efficiently. And one of the ways that we're looking at it is by taking event processing it and putting it on the gateway devices. So you're actually moving intelligence from the device end through the gateways, doing complex event processing embedded in that technology to allow you to have one intelligent data to move to the back end, but also to minimize the amount of data to make sure that you're lowering latency and you're understanding how it can get back into that data center, whether it be in the cloud, whether it be in-house, whether it be hosted, it doesn't matter. But you have to architect to be able to do this. This doesn't happen by accident. You've got to think about that platform which goes all the way from the device all the way back to the data center. And of course, when we think about this fast data in action, I just talked a little bit about healthcare, it's true in lots of industries now. And it will increase by the number of devices and the amount of machine to machine that gets implemented over the next few years. Whether we're talking about traffic management, when we're talking about taking number plate recognitions and doing something with it, there's a huge amount of information that needs to be done, which needs to be done very, very quickly. If we're talking about transportation, it's sort of interesting. If you're moving containers around and maybe there's up to $20 million worth of goods inside a container, you sort of want to know if there's been an intrusion on it instantly so you can act against that you can take some action. The critical part about moving this fast data is the ability to be able to take all the information, do something with it, and do it in the fastest possible time. And increasingly over the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to become more and more demanded to be real time. If we're talking about the value of some of these ecosystems, when we're talking in billions of dollars across some industries, what we will be seeing is real benefit of dealing with things in real time. It's not going to happen by accident. It happens because you architect the platform to be able to do it. Now, when we've worked with Beecham, we found that there's basically 5 pillars that we have to think about when we're talking about this standard platform. It's about how do you understand how to develop and deploy in a way that you can have standardization. You can have the same environment, whether you're talking about developing something at the back end which is feeding down to the device, being able to have a two-way communication, With standardization, you should be able to take data in, but you should also to be able to update your gateway or your device across that network. You've got to be able to manage and analyze huge amounts of data. You've got to be able to take the structured and unstructured data. You've got to be able to take that environment, analyze it, take action from it. You've got to be able to integrate across a hugely complicated ecosystem. And I will say what I said at the beginning. One of the things that is fundamentally important about this is recognizing that in the ecosystem of an M2M world, there'll be lots of different partners. There'll be lots of different people involved, whether they be carriers, whether they be application providers, whether they be original device manufacturers, whether they be system-on-a-chip vendors. You've got to think about the entire ecosystem and work out how that's going to work, but in a standard environment. And of course, you've got to protect and comply. John was talking about regulation with the FDA. I talked a little bit about healthcare. There's an increasing amount of regulation with data and how you deal with it. You've got to be able to know who's in the system, identity management. You've got to be able to protect the data wherever that data is, whether it be in the database, in the central cloud, or whether it be traveling around the network. You've got to be able to protect that and comply with the regulations. And of course, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to optimize and innovate. M2M, device to data center, as I would call it here, actually, it is about innovation. There are huge opportunities in all industries. One of the things that Beecham told us was that actually M2M is not about a particular slices of particular industries. It's now affecting all industries, and there are opportunities in all industries across those ecosystems. So our view is that you have to have this standardized platform. You've got to have a platform where you can put the application, whether it be at the device end or whether it be at the data center end, on that standard platform to give you agility. If I look at the length of time that most M2M projects are taking to come to fruition, this business will never grow at the rate it needs to unless they find a way of being significantly more efficient. If you're writing in machine code to each individual device and there's 50 billion devices, it's just not going to work. You've got to start thinking about how can you write once and deploy many times? How can you have certainty that once you've written it, that you can upgrade those devices, either from a software or a hardware element, without having to rewrite the whole ecosystem? We're talking about devices at the moment which may be in the marketplace for 5 to 10 years. I would put to you that sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to be seeing a much faster rotation of devices. Why? Because the functionality of the devices is going to go up. The functionality of the gateways is going to change dramatically. If you're going to have the software being rewritten every time, it's never going to work. You've actually got to have a way of doing that. And that brings us into the way of thinking about the way we talk about platforms. Our view is that Java is a fundamental in this business. Absolutely fundamental. Java embedded. Why is it embedded? Because it's embedded into devices. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about smart cards. Java is on smart cards. Most of you have got smart cards in your wallets. Java will be on those cards. Java ME will be in small devices. Java SEs will be in gateways. Java is in the middle tier. There are 9.5 million Java developers in the world. If you can write Java, you can write Java. If you can write to one device, you can deploy to many devices. It allows you to get efficiency and agility and speed by being able to have that commonality of platform. By having that commonality of platform, it links into the middle tier. Absolutely critical for M2M. Whether it be about business process monitoring or whether it be about the whole integration in terms of bringing those M2M applications together in this ever-changing ecosystem. It's about standardization of the plumbing. And being able to have, at the hardware level in the cloud and the data center, a standard architecture. Systems which are engineered to perform with huge amounts of data, whether they're big data appliance or whether we're talking about structured data. It's about having that engineered to work together standard approach where they're all the same. If you can have the same architecture, whether it's being run in premise or being in cloud or whether it's hybrid, it doesn't make any difference. It's just the same architecture. Being able to deliver that architecture, whether it be on any device or gateway, all the way through to the back end, is critical for agility. It's critical for delivering business benefit across the project. Now, our view, and we've worked very hard to do this, and we invest about $4.5 billion a year in R&D, is to try and make sure that we can give that plumbing to whoever needs it. It's about making sure that that complete portfolio is there should somebody want to do it. On the other side of the coin, in this marketplace which is evolving, it's not about necessarily taking all of everything at one go. It's about taking elements of it, maybe taking parts of Java, parts of middleware. So we've built technologies to be best in class in each individual area so that they can be picked as is needed in that platform. But most of our effort is making sure they're actually engineered to work together. If you're in a device to data center world, being able to deliver that standard platform to allow people, whether they're doing container management, whether they're doing number plate recognition, whether they're doing healthcare services, or whether they're delivering efficiency into the aviation industry, if you have a standard platform, the chances are that you will be able to get benefit much quicker. You'll be able to deliver something which actually is material to the end user. My fear for the M2M industry is that actually we're all going to talk about this stuff and we're going to make it all really complicated. If we make it really complicated, the time to benefit will be too long, and there'll be lots of devices out there, but they will not be delivering the benefit that is required by either consumer or by business. Standardized plumbing, standardized platform, being able to do things from device to data center is fundamental in the architecture for success of any M2M project. Thank you very much for listening to me. It's been a pleasure to be here.